Welcome to the Buried Dreams podcast. I'm your host, Elle Morris. This episode, we have Joel Olivas, an interactive multimedia designer from El Paso, Texas, with a passion for technology, music, and art. We get into themes regarding the future of society and our experiences growing up in the church. For artist content and news on the latest Buried Dreams, follow us on Instagram at Buried Dreams Podcast. Enjoy! Joel, we've known each other for a while. Not a while, a short bit.
But it feels like a while.
It feels like a while.
I love those friendships. Relationships are nice. You know, they don't always hit like that, do they?
No, they absolutely do not. We met at Law Reunion months and months ago.
That's true.
And I guess we just connected on Instagram. We were following each other's lives. And how did we meet up again?
I saw you at my buddy, which you should also invite at some point, Charles Smith.
Oh, yeah.
He's a fashion designer here in Dallas. Really, really talented dude. Great, just soul. Like, what awesome vibe, you know. And someone that really takes the time to talk to you and doesn't get caught up in the cloud because he's, you know, up in the respected in culture for sure. And I guess
I can see that.
You ended up there somehow. And he's like a really close friend of mine, one of my best friends in Dallas. So we help each other out all the time.
I actually think I saw that flyer on his Instagram page because when I moved here, I was looking for fashion designers in the area just to kind of get my feet in the ground here. And I followed Charles and Melissa Taylor.
Let's just say he sold like 10 hoodies in the middle of summer. I call that really good, like odds, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sell one hoodie in like mid-June. When was this? May?
How do you know him?
I actually spent a lot of time working out of music school. I got into music production, so I was working at a studio and really going for the producer DJ career style.
You were?
Yeah.
That's how you started out?
Heavy into the audio part of everything. I was working as an audio engineer and producer at a studio in Addison. It was called Honor Roll. And it did kind of gravitate more towards hip hop, especially more towards the end, even though they kind of wanted me to do like EDM stuff. And just over time, getting in, knowing artists and meeting all the singer-songwriters and stuff like that, I ended up meeting at a show an artist that he managed. Her name was Hannah. Fentress is her last name. She kind of lately has moved more into real estate, things like that, but she's extremely talented. I mean, kind of was like being groomed by Disney for a little bit, and she's like, nah, I don't want to do Disney stuff. I mean, top-notch talent and beautiful person. Like, she's beautiful inside, outside, like good friend. And we kind of just met at the show, like all of us. He was managing her, and okay. And then I sent Hannah a track at some point, and we just ended up recording in the studio. Made some like pretty freaking bangers, you know, like really good music. Not just bangers, just like so well, like great music, a really good connection as far as like musically and artistically, right?
And she didn't want to continue on that path?
Well, it's just tough, man. Music is so difficult. It is the hands down most manipulative industry in the world. I mean,
how so?
Banking is because particularly the dark side of the music industry is people will absolutely take advantage of your passion and your desire to express yourself and make money from you and not give you part of that cut at all. Like, of all the music I've produced, I haven't seen a single cent. These songs have millions and millions of plays. You know, I know there's one song, I know like maybe 15 million isn't that much, but it's just like more of the, like, where are my 2 cents, you know? Like,
how would you handle law to make sure contractually you get funds for your work?
I mean, we signed some contracts in the beginning and it was like a 50-50 split, but honestly what ended up happening is that studio just died. Like, the owners really messed with like our main kind of like leader in the sense of the whole studio, the head engineer, who's like essentially, let's just say was our musically spiritual center for the whole studio. I mean, his godmother is Erykah Badu. Like, his mom was Badu's mentor growing up, and he just carried this amazing energy. His name's Gunwa Oluwadele, and he has like 5 other names that I don't really remember all the time. Kamau. And so, you know, what happened was we were getting thrown in all these sessions with other producers like Jay White, who's Cardi B's producer. And we would contribute like little samples and stuff in there, but we never, honestly, like that was just fresh out of college. Like I'm a starving artist, but extremely passionate and like very stubborn where it's like, I'm going to make a hit song and we're going to do it. And then, you keep being goaded by people who are marketing on our, sure, they're taking their own risks in having the space out, but they're absolutely taking advantage of you every single, getting as much free stuff as they can out of you, making this work for really cheap and providing a high quality product. And so it definitely left some burns for me. And that's a big reason why I ended up leaving the music industry. And I think Hannah also experienced a lot of that as a singer, as like a really beautiful girl that sings amazingly. I never had to auto-tune her ever. She was just like nail it first take all the time. I was like, yes, it's so rare to find a singer that is that good. I'm telling you. But, I just organically the artist path that she was on was different from Charles's vision, and stability kind of took more of a priority, I think. So.
And Charles was the producer?
Manager.
The manager
just
of
artist manager. So he would handle like her look and her branding and stuff like that, so.
And not the fashion designer. This is different.
No, it's the same Charles. Yes. So he doubled as fashion designer and artist manager.
Oh, wow.
Because it's kind of part of the persona of vision that, like the creative branding image, like this is like the look. There's a big part, especially in the music industry, when you're going to be an artist, like a singer.
Well, all this makes me think about networking, and you were young when you were working in this production studio, right?
I was 23.
So it seems like in a way they're taking advantage of maybe younger, talented people that are willing to work their life away to get the experience and build the network. And then also like what Charles was doing with managing artist, it is also a way to get higher clientele. If he wants to be a fashion designer, it seems like a really good way to meet important people that can help project your career. So how did that help you at all, meeting these types of characters?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it brought out other aspects of my art that I didn't actually think about doing. For example, fashion shows, Charles we ended up, I've been helping him out to produce his fashion shows, and that would include projecting onto buildings, because I did purchase myself a really large mass industrial projector, 12,000 lumens, and that projects onto buildings. And,
what's lumens?
Lumens is a scale of measurement for lighting. So it's brightness.
It's brightness. I was thinking it was the clarity of the pixel clarity.
No, so I see what you're saying. That's like,
because when you're doing big projections like that, it seems like you need like a more granular technology.
A lot of pixels. Yeah. Yeah, right. Quick 101 on the vocab here. Pixels as dimensions is like the content of the output that you put. Lumens is the brightness. So when someone says 12K lumens,
I never knew what 4K meant.
4K, when they say 4K, usually that's referring to the resolution. So lumens and resolution, that's the difference. Resolution is 4K, that's 4,000 pixels in the image.
Oh, okay, yes. Because, we use pixels with satellite imagery.
Exactly, yeah.
I work in geographic information systems, so the squares that creates the image that our eyes perceive.
I thought you were a data scientist.
Data scientist with the geographic component. So we take data with the attributes. So you have a location of a pharmacy, and you have, the client, what they're purchasing, when they purchase it, how often. You have all these attributes, but then you have their address, and you can kind of see your clients that are visiting, like what their demographic profile is based off of where they live. And
that's like intense.
It's data science with the geographic component. So we make a lot of maps as one of our visual products.
Big tech?
No, I mean, I've worked in big tech formerly.
Okay, I thought that was part of a big tech thing there. I mean,
imagery. Satellite imagery, I work in commercial real estate. So there is GIS is something that's used all around the world. You can use it in local, state, and federal governments. Every country in the world uses it. In Malaysia, like their governments are mapping boundaries, parcels. Commercial real estate is using it for understanding customer profiles. You can use it for emergency management. So if a hurricane hits, how do we manage all these people, or like create applications and to assist?
And that's all because we accepted the terms and conditions.
Everyone, yeah, literally they're tracking so many people. And and where they go, it's insane. There's a company called Placer AI, and they track 30 million phones. They literally buy data from different applications that allow location services, and they know where they live, they know where they shop, they know everywhere they go.
Dang. I mean, sounds about right. Totally.
Yeah, and with that sample, that 30 million Americans, we can make generalizations of the 400 million that live here, and that's a really good sample. They extrapolate, those numbers to make estimations of like what, certain areas and people are doing based off of like the little blocks. The way people live, there's a pattern and socioeconomically. So if you have like one, group of land with all these like neighborhoods in it, usually it's like richer people kind of congregating together. So you'll see like patterns in space.
Late stage capitalism, baby.
Digital capitalism?
Late stage capitalism.
Late stage capitalism.
Yeah, no, that's...
Yeah, but we're using maps on our phone every day. Like our whole world revolves around geographic information systems.
It's crazy. No, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, sidebar.
But going back to like how the network has been helping you and your career now, like...
So, yeah, I guess honestly, a lot of it is, it's this interesting balance of having to do things for either really cheap or for free in exchange for notoriety, and that's something I definitely learned from Charles, for example. Like sometimes you just got to do stuff. And with Charles, one thing that helped a lot with getting my name out there was during the 2020 protests for Black Lives Matter movement, when it really resurged again. We actually did a demonstration at the JFK Memorial, and I projection mapped the entire memorial, like put the projector and we mapped the whole thing out. And I did all these animations and slideshow things, and we, held like a rally essentially there. I mean, we got on the paper. It was cool. Like Dallas Morning News covered it, and it was really cool to just, get introduced to like more people. Although it's a lot of times when you meet artists and it's like, it's funny because it's either like, oh my God, I love what you do. Yeah. Oh, let's connect. Okay. Oh man, we'll do this. Oh, next week. Yeah. Okay. And then you never hear from them for a good while at least. Or maybe
well, that's usually when you're like socially drinking and making empty promises to everyone.
Well, there's a part of that, but I think with artists, it does tend to happen more, and not just that, because there's a certain element of creativity that is very, emotional and like kind of contributes a little bit to the ADD, I think. And that's because there's like creativity. I look at it as a way that an organization of chaos, and sometimes it's just like, because where else do you get ideas and things? You got to kind of reach out of what's already in front of you.
Out of the construct.
In a sense, yeah, and pull it back in. And sometimes it's just, tough to be linear all the time. And just, that's why like I know myself as well as many other creatives aren't the best with admin work. Actually, like have a tough time sitting down and doing my taxes, things like that.
Yeah.
It's a different like waveform of our like brain, it's definitely a different flow.
I feel like I'm better at admin than being a creative, and being so organized and such like an administrator and how I manage my projects in my life and making sure everything is in perfect order. It's really helpful, but I think I need to spend more time focusing on tending to my creative self.
Your expression.
My expression. I get a little discombobulated about how to do that. And the biggest thing I think helps me a lot is being alone for a time without distraction. And maybe that doesn't mean I have to be doing something either. I really like to just sit there, maybe write, or could be doing mushrooms, or just sitting alone and with my thoughts. I think or meditating too. Meditating, going inside of yourself, having that separation from the external really helps me connect more with that inner self, which is creativity there.
I think writing is probably the best first step you can possibly do. For a good while, I haven't done it lately, but I did hit a phase, especially when I need to be at my most creative, I do morning pages. Which means you just...
Did you read The Artist's Way?
Of course.
I read it too. That helped me so much in my journey.
Twyla Tharp, I think, right? That's her name.
Julia Cameron.
Is Julia Cameron? Okay, I was reading this Twyla Tharp book, which I thought that was her. My bad.
There's a different one about a similar thing.
The War of Art. Maybe that's what that one
The War of Art. There's also like A Course on Miracles.
I'm not sure with that one, but
I haven't read that one, but I thought that might be something similar to The Artist's Way. But
yeah, Twilight.
I really like the idea of synchronicity, where you imagine something that you want to do, you write about it, and all of a sudden something in your life happens. You're thinking about, I really want to go to a fashion show. And then you go out that weekend and you meet someone going to a fashion show and they invite you to go. It's like that synchronicity. If you put it out in the universe, if you think it, something aligns.
Yeah, and you have to be bold about it. You have to not be shy. It's like, there's that element of manifestation that really does put into play, and you have to put yourself out to it. I was in New York actually a few years ago. My sister lived in New York for a while before the pandemic, and she's an actress. She loves theater and all that. And we went to an off of Broadway, a drunk Shakespeare like show, which is really hilarious and really cool.
That's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it's like you have to take shots, and then the crowd gets to make someone take a big old accumulation of leftover drinks.
Oh wait, the audience is taking shots?
Yeah, also. Yeah, they give you 2 shots.
And the actors are taking.
But the actors drink way more, for sure.
Wow. What? Imagine how many shows did they do in a week?
Well, probably 2 or 3, but
they're getting drunk 2 or 3 times per week? Man.
Well, only one person gets really drunk. So they alternate that really drunk person throughout the night. And so, but it came after the show, and I told my sister, hey, linger. Let's just hang out for a second. And then you go backstage and you introduce yourself to one of the actresses, right? Or not even that, let's catch them. If they come up, you go up to them and talk to them really quick and be like, hey, I just moved here from Boston, and I've, do a lot of theater in college, and I'm just looking for, where do the actors hang out? What is there?
So essentially a lie.
Well, no, she actually did a lot of theater in her college.
But she said for you to do it.
No, I told her to do it.
Oh,
so I'm
okay.
Like, hey, this is what you do, because it's this is how you get yourself into the scene. That's really important societally, right? It's like you got to find out where the people that are doing what you want to do are going to hang out, and that's actually one of the things that doesn't really hit too well in Dallas for my particular career, or my skill set, my art form.
Because you're so rare?
Just here. But you go to Montreal, New York, Miami, DC. There's schools that have full-on programs for this interactive multimedia design sort of thing. And there's some really, really impressive people out there in Dallas. I think Texas is just behind culturally on many, many things, and technology-wise. It's just very oil-friendly here. So.
I wonder if, since everyone's migrating to Texas, if that scene will eventually develop. I feel like it will eventually develop. It's just a matter of how long.
Honestly, I don't think we're going to get another major cultural shift in Texas until we hit a war or something serious. Something bad has to happen to make people be because we've been cruising for a long time, and I think a lot of people have been so on both sides of the political spectrum, so just at war
polarized
with each other, polarized that it's hey,
that's
man,
an interesting perspective.
It's something we've just had it so nice here. Recession, economies, but we're all still eating fine. There's no lack of food. And granted, there's a lot of homelessness. That's a whole other topic. But as far as our regular existence as just people, and for the most part, it's
not the most expensive city I've lived in.
No, and especially Texas is a very economically friendly place.
It is for businesses, definitely.
And it's mostly because of a lot of the oil. The Texas, I'm realizing that the reason the economy is so good right now in Texas is we have the second largest oil field in the world.
No way.
It's called the Permian Basin. And with the invention of fracking, which does create some seismic activity.
Well, it's natural gas, right?
No, it also gets petroleum out.
Oh, wow.
It's a certain way to basically cut through the rock and force all the petroleum to come up easier.
I know what fracking is, but do they export it, or do we keep it
They export a lot. Because that's why basically there's that triangle, Dallas, Austin, Houston, and all the oil comes from West Texas, Odessa and all that. So it's easy transportation. You go through Austin or you just go to Houston, and Houston has insane ports. Have you been to Houston before?
I've never been.
They have honestly the largest bridge I've ever seen in my life. It's a 10-lane highway, and it goes over it must be 60 stories high. It's ridiculous. It's giant. And that's because all of the oil tankers and everything go underneath.
Okay, because I was it's a hump.
Yeah, it's giant. And it's like literally, I mean, it
goes up really high.
Impressive. I don't think I've seen, and it just looks like a giant road. So maybe it's not like a piece of art or anything, really. It's just like a really, really obnoxiously large bridge highway. Nothing pretty about it. It's just very large.
Practical.
And so, yeah, I mean, that does add a lot of stimulant to the economy, like it or not. I know that I'm not like a pro oil, pro fossil fuel guy, but because of that, we do have the nice things that we have right now, at least until we move on to the next more renewable, if we make it that far, which I hope so.
Well, also, I think that Texas being flat, it has a lot of wind, maybe. I don't know. I studied this. I should know. I studied
this is up your alley, huh?
Wind and solar for a long time, but it's been years.
So I guess tying back to all these economic things, I do think that because it's more business and it's very much like commodity based, because oil is a commodity, right? And so, I mean, here in Dallas, it's like you get a bunch of finance people everywhere, and it's like banks, business, finance. And honestly, I do think there is the art community is small.
It is very small.
It is small, and it is not funded, and the funding is kind of very close. You have to be very political about it.
Yeah, you have to kind of know where to go for the funding and
make the right friends.
I was talking on the last episode with Stetra about there's like gatekeeping in a way.
100%.
And there's the separation between these underground freelance artists and then the more fancy, luxurious community. And I think they want to reach this group of people, but those people don't know how to reach them. And there's just a disconnect.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. Gatekeeping. You say that, and I mean, I see that in the Dallas arts scene 100%. I'm sure your roommate can probably speak well on that too, 100%.
Well, she is really, Dora Reynosa, she's my roommate. She's really good at meeting these people, talking with them. She's very confident. She will go up and tell her whole story in front of 100 people and be very articulate. And I think that's the kind of people that they look for. And not every artist is going to have that skill set, but does that mean they have less value?
Well, yeah, that's just all about how you sell yourself, and especially here in Dallas, like I think if you learn how to sell yourself and pitch yourself and angle yourself in the way that's going to gain the approval and attraction of the like a certain cultural vibe that's here in Texas, you'll do really, really well. Other cities though, like, I mean, if you go to New York, you got agents, like things like agents is not really a thing in Dallas. It's more of like curators that will book, I'm this artist and I curate things and I'll bring in this artist for that. There's no like agents, like how you see in Hollywood or in New York, where like it's someone's job to book other artists for these things. It's like, I work with you, I get you this, and I get 20% of your thing, which honestly, I would give 20% if I just get a gig handed to me or installation. Totally, charge nicely.
I mean, there's a reason why that's a thing, you want to focus more on the art and the media and not worry about having to find all of the jobs and book all the jobs. You want someone who focuses on understanding where the opportunities are, that does all of the networking to understand what events need what and who they can outsource for it. You want to rely on someone who you're going to make more money having the agent than doing it by yourself. So why not give them 20%?
Totally. And that was the original intention with that studio that I had joined. They were supposed to bring us a bunch of clients, but they just didn't follow in through that end. I think.
What do you think was their demise?
Lack of income. Like they just weren't booking clients. They weren't advertising. Like we could have done a lot more, but at the end of the day, it's like, who's going to do the footwork of sales? And that's like, it's such a key driver for a lot of stuff. And it's a big reason why I fortunately did a lot of sales when I was in college and growing up, like I worked at Verizon. So I learned that they would fly us out for training and stuff. So I've definitely learned a lot about how to sell and how to close a deal, and then just like, hey, like ask for money. And from what I've seen, all of my artist friends, like I would say like 90% of them don't know how to ask for money.
Well, I think that's what they're doing at the Cedars Union. I went to one of their events where they kind of talk about what they're doing there and their goals for the future. And one of the major things was, building a community of artists, but also teaching them skills on how to sell yourself, how to become financially secure on your craft alone, and helping them finding grants. And they're kind of connecting those two pieces of where all the money is in that more luxurious side of the art world, and these, freelance, free-spirited artists out there trying to make it on their own.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, I kind of like to see myself in both pools at times, because sometimes I'll be involved with very high-end installations, and then other half of the time I'm just like, what am I thinking? Like,
Hole in the wall.
Not like lone wolf, but just like gunslinging, freelancer. So
I want to talk about one of the grants that you received. You got the TACA New Works Grant. And I kind of want to use this podcast as a way for people to learn about different opportunities here in Dallas. What was the grant for, and what is that organization, and how did it help you?
So TACA is the Arts Community Alliance of Dallas. That's what that stands for. And essentially they have a lot of different grants. And this one particular one, it was a quartet that was written by a composer and basically conceptualized by my mentor and like art partner, Carmen Menza. She's also, I've been like her techie confidant for years now. When we first met, one of the first festivals I ever worked in, we have just a lot of similar backgrounds, like music and, ex-church kids. And
You're an ex-church kid?
Oh, yeah. No,
is your dad a pastor?
No, not that intense, but I was a worship leader.
You were a worship leader?
Oh man, I actually have a funny story about that.
I was a pastor's kid, so I'm also an ex-church kid.
Oh, okay. I see we've turned to the
fist bump,
to the light, to the
dark side.
To the dark side.
But it's kind of the light side, honestly.
It's like the prism, right? All the colors. Like,
yeah, I see the prism now.
Yeah, exactly.
But my brain was covered in concrete before.
Me too. Oh my God, big time. We'll get to that. I'll just go over our grants real quick here. So the TACA, it's the New Works Grant, is essentially for new projects and you want to do, say, a big production or a big project that's going to cost money, and you apply for a grant. I'm a terrible grant writer, and my part of this grant was giving all the technical aspects. Hey, we need this, and it's going to cost X, Y, and Z, and we need this much money for the grant to make it work. Because of Carmen and Mark Menza are married. They're like goals, man. I love them so much. They're like, I want like my partner, to like, I just love what
emulate what they have going.
Yeah. She does these really cool light boxes, and just has like really her concepts and her ideas really fuel the creativity for like Mark to compose music. And Carmen also was a jazz major at UNT. So she also writes as well, so she'll like follow through with Mark and is really good at directing like that. And then she gets me to do all of the, we just, we're connected. I do basically all of her programming for projects like the Meow Wolf one. It's essentially like I'm labeled as the artist assistant for her on one of those pieces. And so anyways, back to that. We applied along with the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, like, hey, here's this project. It's a quartet and it's going to be driven by technology. All of the particle systems will be driven by the quartet players, and it's just something that hasn't really been done in Dallas. And it's associated with high level performers. So I think that helped a lot with getting the grant, doing something novel and having a high level of talent probably is, it is kind of like, for me, I look at it as, it is just like, you got to become a bigger fish in the pond, right? So how do you do that? You just hang out with or swim by the larger fish,
until you get to
and as soon as you, associating yourself with people who have been further along with you and being humble, receiving criticism and being open to what other, opinions and not being so like, oh no, I have my vision. It's like you get further, at least in this town, you will, in my experience, you get introduced to more people, validated for funding, and you get to do bigger projects by associating yourself as like an assistant. And I think this, like, in the end of the day, like, I don't want to say discipleship, but like apprenticeship is something that
it's important.
It's so important and so minimized due to our hyper individualized culture in the United States. Everything is like, oh, we all got to be entrepreneurs and we're going to, that's kind of like this whole idolization of the entrepreneur.
That's a whole big bag that's
a whole nother thing we can go into, but it's just like we forget, we have all this stuff that I know there's a bunch of new things in the world out there, but managing and like you have to learn from other people. You can't, not everybody gets to just discover a new way to do that. That happens very rarely. It's like that percentage. Yeah, it happens, but it's literally like 1% of people become viral or all of a sudden discover, run into something that's groundbreaking or have like that virtuosic, what's the word I'm looking for? That when you're a child prodigy, or have that prodigy skill or whatever.
A genius. You're just a genius. Yeah. I mean, talent there's so few people that are prodigies and geniuses in their field. Most of the people who work in their artistry have done this for years and they've really worked hard to get to where they're at and they've grown. And I think that's true of any craft you want to start. I don't think you're naturally going to be good at it. And with time and practice, that's the only way you're going to get somewhere. So if I want to start at 33 and become a famous pianist, I just got to get to work. And I'm going to be bad at it. Maybe it takes me 3 to 5 years to even get to the point where I can play something really nice and have some sort of energy about it and I could perform. And there's always those hurdles. How do you handle your discomfort as you're going through these hurdles in your craft? New things you're learning, new types of people?
I have a deep passion and I'm very comfortable being uncomfortable. I think that's the biggest thing. It's like if I get thrown in, and I've been in so many situations where like I get thrown in and I just say yes. And I'll just say, oh, can you do this? I'm like, sure. I don't really know how to do it, but I'm just like, I can be like psychopathically like stubborn about if I need to understand how something works, especially in a technical way. Just once you get all nerdy about that, I think it's just more of like, it goes back to even when I would play video games. Like I actually low-key have like a video game addiction because like I won't stop until I beat that level. But that same sort of, attitude I do carry as far as like, hey, like I will not stop at this task until it is completed or I've made significant progress. That is part of what helps me work under pressure so well. And not everybody can do that. I've done a lot of shows with dancers, and my experience with actually another grant that I've been a part of has been that's another TACA grant, which I think I've gotten 2 New Work grants and 1 Arts Activate grant. And this one was with my mixed media dance group called Mixed Emotus. And we've done the elevator project at the AT&T Performing Arts Center twice now. And it's been a really cool project where we projection map the whole floor, the dance floor, and our dancers. This last one, I made it interactive. So the environment is changing according to the position of where they are, And then the first time we did it was with the 2 dancers. And just kind of working with the team like that, I realized, just because I work really well in like high pressure and I have that ability to like handle it, the heat, and just push through, not everybody else does. A lot of people in the creative arts do need like support and validation, so that's been
I would say I'm guilty of that. I am really good at putting myself in uncomfortable situations and doing it, but that doesn't mean I don't feel discomfort. I feel absolutely uncomfortable in uncomfortable situations, but I still do it because that's the only way you can grow is by putting yourself there and doing it. But the way that I handle it is sometimes I'll cry because I get overwhelmed with the discomfort, and that's just part of the process.
That's exactly what I was about to say. That's not a bad thing. I mean, I wish I could just bust out and cry sometimes. I haven't had a good cry since like 2 years where I'm just like, let it all out. And that's, maybe it's just I hit certain bullying points, but I do go to therapy a lot. So I tend to offload. I don't really hit that level of, eruption too often, honestly.
I would say the same. I think going to therapy for a couple of years now, I'm really stable. Even when I have my therapy sessions, I remember when I first started going to therapy, I was crying so intensely every single time. And now I go and I'm like, yeah, that made me sad, or that made me feel angry. And I don't have this overwhelming expression of emotion. I can really just feel it inside my body and not react to it too much. But when I do cry is more of like my eyes will well up and I'll just feel it and some tears will come out, but I'm not just like screaming, crying.
Yeah, I love hysterically crying. Actually, it's like a cleanse of the soul in the deepest ways. Man.
It is. I had one of those. I did one of those because something very, very terrible happened, and I think that was like a year and a half ago. So I think it still was affecting me up until, now. And there was just one night where no one was home, and I just felt so angry. And why did that happen? Why did it have to? It's not my fault, and I have to bear the pain. And I just cried so hard and like screamed in my pillow. And now I feel like it was very releasing for me.
Yeah.
Like where I don't have to I feel like I'm almost kind of over it now. Like it hasn't affected me in the last few months because I had that cathartic
breaking point
expression of, It wasn't even a breaking point because I feel like I kind of just allowed it to happen instead of it overtaking me, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I had the feeling and I was like, you know what? I feel like I want to cry and I'm allowing myself to do it. And I got to a point where I was like fake crying. I was like, okay, I think I'm done now.
Nice. Yeah. So,
I emptied it out.
Yeah. Well, no, I think those moments do help. But a lot of times I have seen people just revert to crying as an excuse to get out of things.
Yeah.
And as much as I try to maintain empathy and be sensitive, at times I can, when it comes down to like something that's due or something that's very important to me, I think an important skill to learn is to shut down some emotional
compartmentalize.
Yeah, because in the creative process, it's something I've learned a lot from this Rick Rubin book I've been reading, Creative Way of Being. I love it.
He's the Cowboys owner, right?
No, that's Jerry Jones. Someone's not from Texas.
Oh. Yeah. Is it showing? Is my non-Texas showing? Who's Mark Rubin again?
Rick Rubin. He is a legendary producer of music. He's done literally every single,
don't annihilate me.
Started with the Beastie Boys.
Oh, okay.
You don't always hear him because, he's not like the songwriter or anything, but he is behind like, oh my gosh, like Adele, the Beastie Boys. It goes he came up with the Beastie Boys, and then from there it was like, literally every single band, like Nirvana. I don't think actually, and don't quote me on that. Hang on, I have to look it up.
That's pretty insane.
But
I can't believe I've heard this name so many times, and I didn't know that he was the producer of all these big names. That's pretty
So in the 80s,
sad.
He did, Beastie Boys, Run DMC, Jazzy J, LL Cool J, Slayer, which is like a metal band.
Slayer, yeah. Well, the range here. Come on.
Public Enemy, The Cult, and then in the 90s, he moved on to Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Wow.
And then Ghetto Boys, Sir Mix-a-Lot, Mick Jagger.
I feel ashamed of myself. You're just shaming me at this point.
Tom Petty. It's ridiculous. Like
that is ridiculous. What a life.
System of a Down, Johnny Cash.
What a life.
Tom Petty. I said that Tom Petty already. And let's skip forward like another 10 years. Let's see. Shakira, Dixie Chicks, U2, Vanessa Carlton, Avett Brothers.
Let's just say he's worked with the entire roster of the biggest musicians
Adele,
of all time.
Metallica. He's prolific in that. But he literally just is like a wizard. Like he doesn't have many musical skills or plays an instrument.
Oh, wait. Rick Rubin. He's that guy who he's like
big beard.
Big beard. Yes, I know him. I've watched some interview he did. That's how I know him.
Yeah. He's like Chunky Gandalf.
But he's like, I know. In the interview, he was like, I don't have any technical skills. I just have the vision. And I was like, damn.
No, man. Yeah. And so he's a really excellent example of channeling that and understanding when to be in those mindsets, right? So when you're in that creative mindset, like there's that phase of creativity, which is very emotional, right? It's like that's where you find your expressions. It's almost more like a brainstorming session. That's what that is, really, your creative stuff. And then after that part, though, you have to get yourself execute. Yeah. And execution is non-emotional. That's where you really have to learn how to separate those two things, because what I see with a lot of artists, and myself included, I've been a lot better since I've implemented these conscious changes into my practice and into my habit lifestyle. I've seen great improvement as far as, just amount of work and recognition and level of productions and art that I get to make.
You have to detach is what I've learned.
Yes.
Because in the process of creating, it's a very emotional piece, but at the end you have to really detach from it and just put it out there and then keep moving forward, because you're going to learn something from each event and you're going to take something, and that action, a main theme of this podcast is to show how important action and reaction is. You have to take the action. You have to just do it. Don't judge it.
Act it.
And move on and take what you learn and apply it to the next project and to the next project. And that's how you're going to evolve as an artist and find who you truly are.
And I think a big thing on top of that I had to learn, I actually talked about this in the last podcast I was in, is that creativeness, that piece of work that you do, that does not define your value as a person at all.
At all.
I see a lot of people, and I've dealt with this, and I've had friend breakups over this because we collaborated on this project. The first Mixed Emotives show is, if you receive criticism for something that you've created, sometimes a lot of people, and there's some insecurity issues there that we all battle at some point. And I've fought those battles, and I think I've come across them. Like, I'm 30 years old. It's taken me a long time. I wish I knew this when I was 23. But, once you create something, that is no longer of you. It's done. It's out there. If something isn't like, let's say, hey, man, that mix isn't good, or, that's an okay painting. It's not that bad. That by no means does that mean that you're an okay artist, or you're an okay producer, or that you're mediocre this, mediocre that. It's just, this is what has come out. And it does not make you any lesser of a person depending on the value of, or how good it is what you create. And I think a lot of people, especially, it's just an issue with like the United States and this hyper individualism. It's like, you're as good as what you produce, I think is a really huge thing of this society that I have been lately just kind of been more conscious of.
Instead of appreciating the
love of community,
Yeah.
If you go to any third world country, in Mexico, for my experiences in Mexico, man, you get to hang out just because you're there. Literally, you're invited to, like, people will invite you. Like, if you meet somebody, and even if you're traveling or if you're staying with your friend or your grandmother for a month or so, and you're not really from there, but you're acclimated and you're trying just to be part of there, like, they will invite you to go have dinner with their families. Like, it's just for no reason. Over here, it's like, okay, who is this person? Who are we going to, they do cool
It's
stuff.
very status based.
And I've had to learn how to, live in that. And I do it well. It's almost embedded. I almost do it like unconsciously,
You're reflecting those behaviors in your life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's being an American, being part of the culture. Each culture has its own things. And I was at the Esri conference last week in San Diego, and I was talking to this girl who created some maps for Portugal, and she's from Lisbon, which is where I lived. So I was having a conversation with her, and it was her first time visiting the United States. And she said she was so shocked by how empty the streets are. And even in the middle of downtown, where the hustle and bustle is, you see a lot of cars. But in foreign countries, it seems like when you go out on a Friday night, you walk across the park is full at 11 p.m. and there's kids out, and you see like 200 teenagers congregated in this little, pavilion area, or you see just people hanging out in the streets at the bars and restaurants, and there's always people walking around, people congregating, interacting with one another. But there is a strong disconnect with community, especially with the urban sprawl that we have in the USA, where you have to drive to get everywhere. There is that gatekeeping
as well. Yeah. Who gets to hang out at the table? Who gets invited to dinner?
Well, I noticed that when I first moved here, no one knew me. I didn't have any creative hobby then. And, I wanted to become a creative. But as I start to get more involved in the creative community, or, have my own projects, you start to see that more people want to know you, or more people recognize you, or, you know, you have more status, you know, and as a human with an ego, it's a natural feeling to be like, okay, I'm accepted. I feel good here. Like, but at the same time, it's like, why do I have to have some sort of status? Why can't me just being a human orb have value?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that permeates into blocks for a lot of creatives. You know, I definitely see where to tie it back into our previous, what we were just talking about, as far as that execution process, people get so caught up, and I'm speaking from experience myself. You know, I was also so caught up in those insecurities of, oh, this isn't good enough, this idea isn't good enough, blah, 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 that I actually would keep myself in that creative stage, and I would not be able to disconnect the emotional part to get to the execution part. So that's why I would have, I mean, dozens of unfinished songs, you know, produced, like just half done, like maybe just a hook and stuff. But I had so many songs that were not finished because, oh, this is not good enough.
Yeah, because you're worried about what other people will think of it.
And that's literally the only thing.
You just need to keep moving and moving and moving and keep doing and doing and doing.
You have to keep outputting, because what's actually going to show more is your output over time. If people can see, like, it's funny because it's an ego thing. You have to have an ego death about it, because when you first start out, it's not going to be that great, flat out.
It's not going to be.
It's not going to be. But if you're consistent on doing this over a course of years, like, people will be able to see, oh, and they love seeing this. This is kind of like, it's a thing, is like, oh my God, I knew that artist before they blew up. Yo, oh, like before when he was just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you see the progression over the years. And like on my Instagram, you see my progression of like simple little projection stuff, and then moving to more like then interactive, and then like big rooms, and then like immersive. Like, it's just like, people love to see the progression, and it's part of that journey. And as you get better, and then more people notice. And the thing is like,
it's organic.
It's organic.
You got to let it be organic too, because I think we get so caught up in this viral culture. Like, I just have to go viral. I just have to go viral. And
well, there's two sides of that coin though. It's organic is what I also very much gravitate towards. And I kind of rather keep that path and separate business from art. But there's also marketing. And that's how, like, you get a lot of people that just become famous for being famous, because they're just attractive, and maybe the art content or the creative content they produce is not very good, but they're just really attractive people, and they spend a lot of money in marketing and influencing and all that stuff. And next thing you know, you're famous for, you know, singing like booty songs, for lack of a better term.
booty sweat.
yeah, you know. And that's a whole nother side of, like, also like other artists and stuff. Like, there are people out there that don't have that skill talent, and they haven't put the time into it, but they're born into a very privileged family. In the art world especially, it's like, if somebody of a specific value gives something value, all of a sudden your piece is worth all this money. You know, if you get the one person to say, like, one person of value that's high in society in there to like say, oh, this is good, and
I'll buy it for $50K.
I'll buy it for $50K. All of a sudden you're
selling paintings at $50K.
You'll be a blue chip artist, essentially, you know. And a lot of time that sometimes happens. It's just like this funny like thing with luck and preparation, you know. That's what they say, right? It's success happens at preparation meets opportunity. That's like a saying that I live by.
Be ready for the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I mean, sometimes, yeah, sure, hyper privileged people will just always have an opportunity, but that's like 99% of us don't have that. So.
I know, but I almost feel like I'm kind of in this process right now where I'm putting in so much work into everything. Like, I feel like I have a whole second job. Like, I come home and I worked on this. I got home last night around 7 p.m. I started working on Buried Dreams until 11 o'clock at night. And I'm just constantly, Buried Dreams is on my mind.
Do you enjoy it?
I love it. That's the only reason why I do it after work. I come home from work, I feel beat, I feel tired. And it's like, it just runs through my veins. Like, it runs through my veins.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, that's a big indicator of you're doing something that is,
it's so meaningful, and it's so fulfilling. And I am so grateful to have found something that I'm obsessed with it. And I think I get sometimes to this point mentally where I feel discouraged because I want people to love it as much as I love it. And it's going to take time organically. And I don't know how sustainable it is to work like this for I don't know how long I can do what I'm doing. So I decided, I'm like, okay, what are like 3 things that are really distracting me from doing this more and like, you know, finding things that are more fulfilling to me. And the 3 things were like partying and drinking on the weekends, because
Ditto.
I could be doing this. I could be working with artists. I could be, you know, shooting vlogs with artists and doing fun stuff. And that stuff is so meaningful and fulfilling, and I love it. But if I wake up at 3 p.m. the next day because I'm hungover and then I don't really want to do anything the rest of the day, then I waste my weekend. And during the week, the 2 things that really distract me are television and reels. Like, you know, some people it's TikTok, some people it's Instagram reels, just whatever scrolling, Twitter, whatever scrolling you like. Those 2 things, I want to come home from work because I'm tired. I want to do something that is mindless, and TV and scrolling are the 2 very addictive, instant gratifying.
Maybe some dopamine type of
dopamine
activity.
Rushes that just make the time pass. But I don't want to just let the time pass. You know, I want to get good sleep. I want to be mentally present, and I think these years of my life are so crucial to pouring into what matters to me to get a good start for, like we were saying, preparing yourself for the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that opportunity doesn't come for 8 more years and I'm 35. But if I'm 35 and I'm able to fully work on my
podcast for a living
and just communicating with artists, working on building community and artist realms, that would be amazing. I mean, that's 8 years from now, but
it's not that long,
which is not that long. But I think
we get caught up like when we're 20s. It's like, oh my God, we're out of time. It's like, no.
Yeah.
I turned 30 and I feel like I'm 20 again.
But that's why I think it's so important to just start now and be okay with not being the best at it. If you listen to my first podcast, I was freaking nervous. I was so nervous. I felt so uncomfortable. Even in the first up to episode 5, like I was like so uncomfortable during all those episodes. I mean, maybe you can't really tell, but even my production value is getting better. And my dad actually texted me today. He was like, I just listened to your Queer Corner episode with Stetra. I was like, oh God.
Oh, man. Christian dad. Is he still Christian? Is he still heavy?
Yeah,
is he still a pastor?
He's not a pastor anymore, but he's still Christian, but I think he was burned by the church. And
speaking of TVs and vices, though, have you seen that Secrets of Hillsong?
Oh my gosh, I just started watching it yesterday.
Yeah. Man,
it's so insane.
That's literally my ex-pastor from my mega church that I was a worship leader at. Literally came out as one of the congregation members in that in that documentary.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, my friend sent me, oh my God, I'm watching this. Look at it. That's Charles Neiman right there, front row and center next to the, what's his name? Pastor Carl
Jung.
Carl Jung is the philosopher.
Yeah.
The New York pastor for...
he was like helping Justin Bieber and everything through his tough time. And he really fooled everyone. He was living this double life, essentially.
Carl Lentz.
He was living a double life. And, I love that.
Towards the end, he did the double life thing, I think. Towards
the end. In the beginning, it was more pure. But I think in the beginning... they had this quote from the Bible that said, people who are high up and they think that they're high up will have a great fall, and people who are humble will be exalted, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
And I was like, wow, I don't think humans are made to live with that level of power, and it can really like fuck with your brain mentally.
I mean, yeah, man. I mean, people treat pastors almost like they're messiahs in this sense, even though
especially in the mega churches
and Dallas,
and they're like celebrities.
Let me tell you, here in the
I have no
Texas
idea about
area.
anything about Dallas.
Have you ever been to one of the mega churches here? I'm gonna assume no,
but I almost, after watching that, I'm like, I kind of want to go to a mega church because I've never been to one before.
This is the start of what's called the Bible Belt in the U.S. It's the South, so we're one of the most northern points of the Bible. No, I think it starts like around South Carolina.
It goes through Tennessee, Georgia,
all the
Arkansas,
southern states,
Alabama.
But Texas, in particular, Texas is like, I mean, it's one of the first ones to do the abortion ban, like fully, right? And that's all due to religious, quote unquote, reasons. But it's huge, man. I mean, it is a point where, that Hillsong model of church, I think, and I don't want to like offend people who are Christian, things like that. But it's a very
There's no problem with Christians. It's the institution that and the people who abuse the power, because at heart, I think that, the purpose of, the books and the Bibles and Buddhism and Islam, it's like to have a moral scale and something to give you hope and believe and make you feel like you're okay in your life, like it doesn't matter if all these trials and tribulations come, like there's greater hope and it makes you believe in something greater, which I think is a beautiful thing.
I mean, I believe we're spiritual beings at the end of the day. We actually connect on much further than just the physical. There's a whole spiritual element, and that's what energy is all about as well, right? And so we all need that. It's just in Texas, it's really become like Christianity Inc. They're producing legit rock shows every Sunday morning, like big production, LED walls, giant concerts, like super ambient lighting.
People are jumping around like a concert.
Crazy, and the structure of like, this is where I think Hillsong played one of the largest roles in this whole frenzy of Christianity Incorporated. The way that they started writing songs, they're just such good songs. And it really, really was set into these church settings where it's like praise and worship. And then immediately after praise and worship, tithes and offering. So it's just like they structured this like a company where it's like, let's get everybody like emotional and just in like, that.
I want to give to God because
it's a drug, man. I'm telling you.
It's a drug. Religious. There's like researchers who research this religious euphoria people. I've experienced the euphoria.
Yeah. For me, what was crazy was the first time that I ever did Molly. I was 19 and I had split from the church by then. But that feeling that I had, that euphoric feeling from the Molly, I was experiencing every weekend at church as a worship leader. It being like on the stage and like singing and leading people singing and stuff like that. It was that intoxicating. Like it's very powerful. It's very, very powerful. And I do see the large church institutions abusing that big time. And that's how you kind of like, that's the first way to grip people as far as like, keep coming to church. And you just feel so good because you really get this incredible connection to everyone. It is a beautiful thing, but I feel like it's really manipulated. And when I was in that, here's this cool story back to this whole why I got kicked out of it. Actually, I was a similar situation with that, like Carl Lentz, not in the sense that I had any scandal like that. My scandal, I was leading the practice, and it was the day Michael Jackson died, and July 25th, 2010. Oh, today's the 21st. Dang, almost. There's this one particular song on the set list that we were playing, and I was listening to some Michael Jackson tunes. I was like, damn, he died. So I'm listening to Beat It. And it's like, so it's like a 1-4 progression. Basically, there was a guitar solo in one of the songs that we were having that had the same progression as that. And I'm like, okay, instead of a guitar solo, hey, y'all, let's play with Beat It. So I taught the whole band how to play that song. Like the bass player and the other guitar player. It's like, because I had to transpose it for the key that we were doing. And, it was for this youth conference thing, and we did it, and it was cool. It was like, Jesus, your love never ends. Yeah.
That's cool.
I thought it was cool.
It's cool, especially for the youthers. Like they're going to eat that shit up.
But as soon, like the very next day, I was told, hey, you're not leading practice anymore. Actually, you're not going to be allowed to play. And they let me play, but it's just like, you're no longer the musical director, because the pastor did not like that at all. And he expressed that same sort of like authoritarianism that Brian Houston, like the lead of Hillsong Church, you'll see if you keep watching that there. It's like they preach all this like mercy and your forgiveness, but as soon as inclusivity, but as soon as you cross their ideology or do one thing that's like not exactly to what they want, it's like cutthroat, you're disconnected. Like you're shunned.
Well, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I was very shamed. I was like, your heart is not in the right place. You shouldn't be playing secular music like this.
That's so terribly harmful to your spiritual life.
And my artistic life too.
And yes.
Actually, that was a big part, I think, why I was so late to bloom, I think, because that was the spiritual element of creativity it's vital. I mean, you don't have that without, there's no creativity.
They're connected.
Without, yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people think spirituality is like religious, but for me, spirituality is connecting with the inner self. And if you don't have that connection with the inner self, then there's no creativity. You have to connect inside and understand what it is that you want to express.
Mm-hmm. And that can be dark.
And that's spirituality.
It can be anything.
Creativity, they're mutual.
Yeah. It doesn't mean spirituality can be dark, you know.
It can.
That's the whole point of expression. That's why you have so many different styles of, you know, I mean, all the, Gothic, expression. It's a very dark energy sometimes, but that doesn't necessarily make it, less. It's expression. And I don't believe that all this Gothic stuff is necessarily inherently evil, like how they'll tell you in church. It's just expression, man. You just have dark shit. Maybe some of it is evil. Like, what is evil?
We all have a dark shadow.
What is good? You know what I mean? But that's the whole point, is expressing it. And when I was shunned in that way, I felt like, oh man, my heart is like, I've crossed a line that like I have to regain my right to do this again. But I never got it back.
You have to prove yourself.
I have to prove myself and fit their mold of what I'm supposed to think.
Yeah, it's very manipulative. I can't imagine how you felt in that time. It's absolutely abusive. Whatever happened to second chances?
Yeah, and I'm a volunteer this whole time.
You're not even getting paid.
Never got a single cent.
And but that's interesting about the Hillsong is because all the people were like, they were telling us all to devote so much time and energy to this program, and this movement, they're not getting paid. Whilst the main people in the church are millionaires wearing Yves Saint Laurent jackets and
paying zero taxes.
It's a cult. It's a scheme. It becomes very, when you have all that money and power involved, things just get
bad.
Mixed up. But in the case of my family, there was no money involved. My dad was not making a lot of money at all, but there was, something that happened in our family where it caused a rift, and, there was a little bit of disconnection between all of us, and all of a sudden he wasn't fit to be a pastor anymore. Everyone that he knew for like 10 years, my mom and my dad, they all shunned them and they don't talk to them anymore. And it's like, when my family was in need and they were struggling and we were fighting through stuff, like how they just completely shut the door and we can't have this. Yeah. What are you preaching?
No, it is 100% my biggest problem with that part of organized,
because you wanted to be part of it. It is a good feeling you have at church. I didn't have bad feelings when I was worshiping, and when maybe sometimes I felt like the convictions. Sometimes I feel like people force their convictions on you.
Yeah, but, like, oh, you're gay. You don't belong, or you're an abomination.
That's the one thing that I struggle with a little bit. It's like,
I have a fun fact on that. Actually, I have a friend of mine that used to be the youth pastor at my old church. Mm-hmm. He quit because he wasn't okay with ideology, and he moved out here to Dallas, Fort Worth, to some town outside of Fort Worth, and he studied theology and everything. And he actually told me through his studies. So the Bible was originally written in Aramaic. Right, that's the original language of the New Testament is Aramaic, not
Hebrew and Greek.
Not Hebrew, not Greek.
What? Mm-hmm. I was always told Hebrew and Greek.
Well, those were the main ones, but the original text is Aramaic, 100%.
The whole book is Aramaic.
The original one, yes.
The whole book's plural.
Yeah, and maybe some of the letters were written in Hebrew, but Aramaic is the main thing, especially the Old Testament. And so the particular verse where it says like homosexuality is the abomination, you go back to the original text, and what it's actually saying, the word homosexuality is not that word. It was the word that was supposedly alluding to
sexual immorality.
No, pedophilia. That it was, and you know how culturally, especially you saw it more in the 70s.
Well,
and 80s,
now they're
gays are pedophiles, and they would
they're still doing that. They're saying drag queens are pedophiles, which is absolutely insane.
So yeah, you kind of see it once you make that connection.
Gosh, that's
like,
so
wait
crazy.
a second here. Okay, y'all are just flipping that script, because it's just like, I don't know where at one point, that book's been translated so many
times, but I feel like they translate it in a way to control people back in the day. And I think it's important to go back to the real text was saying and try to really understand that. And there's one story in the Bible. I was watching some gay documentary, and there's this queer church that like accepts all LGBTQ, and they were talking about, there was a story about the centurion with the slave, where the slave was sick and he loved the slave so much that he found Jesus, and he's like, I believe that you're the Son of God. Can you please heal my slave. I love my slave. And Jesus healed them. But the translated version makes it like it was just a centurion and a slave. But in the old text, he was talking about his slave as his lover, and the slave was a male. And he's saying like, I love my slave, and he's a male. And Jesus didn't ask any questions, and he healed his slave.
Oh, that's cool.
And yeah, and it's like Jesus was hanging out with, the degenerates of the society. And like, I know a lot of churches say like, oh, come in if you make mistakes. Like, we don't want perfect people here, but they don't really act how they preach.
Oh yeah, no, totally. It is. I always say that, and I've said that to some ex-church people, and they just scoffed at me. But I'm like, hey man, all the degenerate artists and all these people that are queer and stuff that I hang out with, who are my friend, that's exactly who Jesus would be hanging out with. He would not be hanging out in church selling items in the bookstore with y'all. Actually, he'd be really pissed about that. Oh my God. Oh,
exactly.
I saw this thing.
He didn't like the fact that money was getting involved with the church, and he was so mad at
He flipped out that one time.
He flipped out over people selling stuff. Was it near the synagogue, in front of the synagogue?
In it.
In the synagogue, they were selling stuff. And I feel like the Bible is, I don't know, maybe people say there's problematic things. I've read a lot of it. I haven't read the whole thing, but I've literally studied the Bible for all of my life because my dad was a pastor, but they also encouraged me to read it for myself and understand what it says and develop my own understandings and meanings towards it, which I'm grateful for. And that all really helped me in my spiritual life, but also like reading the Buddhist books really supplemented like the spirituality that I learned from the Bible.
Yeah.
And I love spirituality. I think it's such a special thing.
Mm-hmm. I would say like majority of people don't actually read the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
What happened is it's called the Word of Faith. It's like the major movement of all the Christian churches here. Well, they'll take excerpts from scripts, like certain verses here and there, and then like paint a story around this one verse or like these 2 verses, and don't provide any context for the rest of the book to like what's actually happening.
Topical teachings.
That's 100% what that is, and so it just it's like feel good church.
It's feel good. Yeah.
And a lot of the issues are like, hey, if you're feeling bad, just give your problems to Jesus. Don't do therapy. No, just give it to Jesus.
Or bringing in people when they
10% of your income.
Yeah. Yeah. Where did this 10% come from?
It is a biblical like tithing, right? But I don't know, like it's just like you're supposed to.
But I get it. It's like, these people are like, it's supposed to be evangelical and very, grassroots, and that needs to be supported in some way because people are doing it full time, just like artists need grants. But then it can become a corporation, and I think that's when the problems start.
Yeah. And hey, the church used to hire artists all the time. Like look at, the Vatican City. That's like the highest, art in the world per se, right? Like all these murals by Michelangelo and stuff. That's like epitome of art, of like human art, of Western art. Let's call it Western. There's so much other stuff out there. It's kind of crazy. Once you start like seeing, I did a lot of ethnomusicology in college. And so I learned a lot about, art and cultures and music, particularly from so many other places in the world. In Africa, cities like Timbuktu, which at a time was the height of pinnacle of society, one of the wealthiest countries in the world. It was Timbuktu, like while Europe was in the medieval times, and they're like grossed out, and it's like 1300s, 1200s, 1100s. They're all dying of the plague and it's dirty, blah, blah, blah. Timbuktu is like gold, and they are thriving. They're the center of knowledge of the Eastern Hemisphere, basically. And then, there's all these civilizations have their own times to shine. I would say Europe definitely took the lead after industrialization, colonization, like they got advantage on that.
Colonization for sure projected them forward
because of industrialization. Once the steam engine and coal came in handy, or things like that, like factories came to fruition. That's when
then they started to look at other populations as animals.
Mm-hmm. They kind of and
wanted to conquer everyone.
Technology, man.
It's interesting to think about the future of the world too. Like, where do you think the world is gonna be in 1,000 years? Because 1,000 years ago, just hearing about, maybe I'm wrong if I say Mesopotamia, but was Mesopotamia a thing 1,000 years ago? Or
3,000 or the 4,000?
BC?
Yeah. No, it's maybe like 1,000 BC.
1,000 BC. So it was about 3,000 years ago. So it's so interesting to think as like, what will America be? We've had our shine, we've had our brightness, and then we have China coming up. But with technology, do you think we'll get to a point of like absolute power where there's going to be no shift in it again? Because power has shifted throughout time, but maybe too much power will cause any person or any nation person to break.
I mean, yeah, I think we're at a tipping point. I've been kind of this is where I get a little, nihilistic maybe in terms of, I feel like we have maybe 7 years left of like life on planet and it can go either good or really bad. Either
the decisions we make by 2030.
Mm-hmm. Like either our technology saves us and we become a utopia, or we screw ourselves so badly, just the weather itself, or nuclear war or whatever. But even if I'm just saying in 7 years by now, this climate change issue.
Well, it was so interesting to go to the GIS conference this year because always been hearing by 2030, we need to have all these things in place and changed. And going to the GIS conference this year, GIS is at the forefront of solving all of these issues, like using data, geographic data to solve climate issues and environmental things. And to see all these different countries dealing with rising sea levels, they're already starting to engineer blocks that go up, in Lisbon, for instance, in Costa de Caparica, the ocean is rising. We studied this when I was studying my master there. We saw where the sea levels were and how they've changed over the last decades. And it's at a point now where they have to raise those levees 10 feet to
avoid floods,
to avoid the flooding that's going to happen. And it's really interesting to see, especially with renewable energy, with utility networks, trying to have digital twins of all of our infrastructures to manage it optimally so we can be more efficient.
And less emissive.
Yeah.
Carbon emissive.
I think I'm more on the positive side. I think that, we are going to suffer consequences, but I do think we're going to make a lot of changes that will offset some of those consequences, and we're going to get to maybe a more stabilized place, but we are definitely going to have to make a lot of changes to our coastal cities, and I don't think that the world is going to end.
Yeah, no, well, I hope
anytime soon.
Would you take the trip to Mars though, if you had to?
No, I would just die. Yeah. I would just die. I don't want to live on Mars. That sounds awful.
That doesn't sound very nice.
No, I mean, it's just it's so sad out there. Think about Yellowstone National Park and then think about Mars. Where do you want to be? Go to Utah, if you want to see Mars.
That's totally right. No.
It's beautiful. You want to see water. You want to see sunlight. You're plants, and the earth cultivates plants. And we all need sunshine. We all need water.
Well, that is also our concept of art and creativity is based off of nature, our color palettes, what we perceive as symmetrical. Nature has probably the first influence ever, right? Green and blue and the colors.
Nature is so inspiring to creativity. Mm-hmm. A lot of people I know, when they want to be inspired, they go on a nature walk, and having that alone time with nature and the true creation, the thing that created us all, which was planet Earth, that is where we find the source.
I would connect my nature connecting growing up was the desert. Since I'm from El Paso originally, so it's a lot of desert there, and sometimes I would just go on a run into the desert or get our ATV, our little all-terrain vehicle, and just go into the dunes.
Requires focus.
Yeah, there's focus for sure, because it's not a friendly environment at all. You take some water, but when you grow up in it, you kind of know, you start to, the landmarks, how far to go here. And I also grew up with horses, so we would ride our horses up the dunes and stuff. And sometimes I got to the point where I was 14, I would ride it by myself up the dunes, and just me and the horse. And those are some of the most, I think that's kind of a big reason why I realized hey, expression going to be probably one of the pillars of my existence. And that's why a big reason I kind of never opted for that 9-to-5 sort of structure of work, because, for me, if I'm just doing mindless, it was hard for me. I'm not trying to make it seem what you do, for example, is mindless. I mean, society needs to function.
It can be mindless. The corporate world is soul sucking, but it almost is. It's what gives me the money to invest in things like this.
Yeah. And of course,
it gives me security.
I have my own corporate gigs, like I think I told you earlier about the anesthesiologist I work for, because we all do need security and stability, right? But in the sense of where I value that transfer of wealth, which is a big thing here. It's like it depends on how serious you want to do your art, and how important is expressing yourself and putting that out there in a creative light for others to see. Like, does that give you fulfillment and purpose, or does that give you anxiety? That's kind of like, I think, a differentiating factor of like knowing that you're doing the right thing or not. It's like every time that I complete a project and I put it out and, I just feel really good that, okay, it's done and people see it and people have felt things. I mean, some of these things I've done have brought people to tears, the BLM protests. I mean, those ones, man, I set that mood up like really well in these videos, and showing also like comparing past and present brutality videos like in Dallas, right?
Wow.
And other things like Emmett Till, and people were coming to heavy tears, man. And that to me was probably one of the most like important moving just contributions that I've done, is like, hey, something that I put together has emotionally moved somebody to potentially, have a new perspective or to just feel, and that's
powerful. It's
such a powerful thing that I decided, okay, you know what, for now, like I'm going to, or at least for this first part of my life where I was still less guided, I gave much more value to I want this song to be someone's escape, or I want them to feel like you're not alone, because I've gone through this feeling too in my relationship breakup, or because most songs can be about that, especially in the early 20s, and or just love and things like that. And I valued that so much more than a steady paycheck, where I was willing to like eat like ramen and not really, and like sacrifice some of my own well-being because of that just burning desire to express. Now that I'm more mature, I wish I had more guidance in that from a mentor or somebody to be like, hey man, look, like keep that flame alive, but you can't maintain that flame if you are not maintaining yourself. It's a difficult balance, especially in this society that we're in. Yeah, everything's expensive. You got to pay for things. So many other artists that I know, like a buddy Cameron, he freaking works at a coffee shop, a barista, extremely talented musician, rapper. Probably one of the most popular ones in Dallas. But sometimes like the art doesn't really make you the money. But at the same time, it's hilarious because I still feel that I have lived as full of a life as anybody that's been traveling on all their bougie vacations to Thailand and blah, blah, blah. Like luxury, like Ibiza and like all these luxury Italy vacations and stuff like that. I still feel like, because of my experiences through this creative energy and this creative expression, I feel as fulfilled in my life.
You get to know yourself, and that's what everyone's searching for, is getting to know themselves. And I think you get to know yourself by looking internally and connecting with other people. I mean, That's what I think the meaning of life is your connections you make with others and the different reflections of yourself that you feel by being with different people. You are different people. Everyone has a different perception of you, and different people have different personalities that bring out different attributes in yourself that help you get to know yourself better. So connecting with people and connecting with yourself are two very, very powerful things, because spirituality, like we said, it's like in the Bible it says love God and love others, but I think God is that spirituality within ourselves and that connecting to the source, the higher being. And then if you love yourself, if you love who you are on the inside, and you get to know who you are through that spirituality, and then you love and connect with others, that's the meaning.
Yeah. Oh, excellently put. I think that's definitely where I identify. And for myself, even like with music, for example, I've been getting back to my musical, because I shut down that path for a solid amount of years. Actually, I haven't really made any music in like 2 years, but hey,
we evolve.
So did
we evolve.
Yeah. So did Miles Davis. He quit for like 3 years. Didn't touch his trumpet for like 3 years.
You can always come back at any time. Just do what feels right for you in this moment.
Yet also, if you don't use it, you lose it.
but you'll be surprised at how quickly it'll come back.
That's true. I think, watch, we'll see. Give me a month of guitar playing.
You might be
again.
a little rusty, but all of that is still locked away in the brain somewhere. And it will, like hula hooping, for instance, I used to be a hula hoop dancer. And if I first pick it up, I suck. But if I practice for a little bit, it all comes back to me, you know? Mm-hmm. And it could take maybe a month for me to get to that skill level again. But your body remembers it, your brain remembers it, but you just have to unlock it.
Yeah, and a lot of that, it was locked by these like
traumatic experiences.
Like bad experiences that just left me hurt and removed that, like it just perverted the love that I had for it, right? Like the church was one reason that happened. And that wasn't even like, I had another incident in the church where like my best friend, who was also a church member, was actually killed by a drunk driver. And I just felt like the church used that as an advertisement platform and like as a recruitment tool. I didn't really feel like people actually felt that bad, or it just felt like it became propaganda. As
a way to control people's emotions and
just to convert more, increase attendance.
It's interesting.
That's how I felt. I can't necessarily prove that to you, but my spirit felt that way. And I think it's for a reason, you know, and that was another level of also like layers of pain.
Our tuition is strong.
Yeah. And so
maybe they weren't consciously doing that, but
no, it's just part of the machine that was built. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are still blocks that I'm finding on the musical side. I'm very thankful that I was able to find it through the visual, and the visual paid my bills a lot better than the music side for sure, which is why I also gravitated towards it. But it's just, I grew up in this interesting scenario where, you know how they say like you always become like what you're best at has to do a lot with what you do as a kid. My dad owned a computer repair business growing up, so I was always like around computers and fixing computers, cleaning them and playing the games. That was my motivation to fix the computer so I could play the iMac games. I don't know if you remember like Nanosaur or like Bugdom and those like with those big iMacs, you know, the colored ones.
Mm-mm.
You didn't have those? Okay, we had them in Texas, and so like all the schools had iMacs, and my dad had to deal with the district, so he would fix all the district's computers, and you know, combine that with then music, and then it was such a natural progression to move into the tech side of things for me, because I've always grown up knowing I knew how to remove viruses, I knew how to like code simple programs without ever taking a class. I just learned it.
Well, I'm super grateful too to have this creative side, but also have that technology side as well, because you can work with both logic and emotion and play around with the two, and what you can create with both of them is greater than the sum of the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I feel like we strayed a lot from the...
No, it's okay. I have one last question for you.
Yes.
What is your buried dream, Joel?
Ooh, to own my own immersive art projection studio.
What does that mean?
It would be basically an entire venue with like 30 projectors in one giant room, and we curate artists to come in and do these really incredible like audiovisual installations from all over the world. You know, that's like, I could see myself being you know, an owner and more on the curating side at a certain point. Of course, like as an artist, putting my own work in there as well, but I love working with other people. I love working with other artists. And so I just want to be involved in that mix of creativity and learning and experiencing greatness, you know, all the time. So ARTECHOUSE has been a really good example for me.
What is it?
ARTECHOUSE. Is
it here in Dallas?
No, it's in DC and Miami and New York. And their structure and how they do things really had an amazing impact on my life, with the trajectory and validation of, you know, hey, I'm good at this, actually. You know, they're flying me out in September to go work on a NASA project, actually.
That'll be dope. I've been to those outer space exhibits where you travel to all the universes and you're like, holy shit, I'm fucking...
Those are like cheesy. Like.
And grain of sand. I know they're cheesy, but they're super impactful and powerful feeling.
Yeah, I mean...
They're fun.
Here, I'll show you a quick clip here.
Wow.
They are... I mean, it's definitely, I think, one of the top venues for this type of work in the U.S.
Wow. It's like, and that person is experiencing that as they walk.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It's super interesting. It's ARTECHOUSE. It's on Instagram. They have some reels that are pretty interesting. I like that. That feels very out of this world.
It was really cool. And to wrap up that experience with our thing here, and as far as this whole creative calling per se, like it really helps so much. Like if it wasn't for that gig, I don't think I would have been here where I am today. I got that call like 2021 or December of 2021. We're still in pandemic. Everything that I was doing, like I worked in events and everything was shut down still. So I was going through a really dark time in my life. And I got called out to Miami because they needed somebody that was like kind of art and tech savvy mostly enough to build these sort of installations like projection. And a friend of mine referred me to them and I went out there, and honestly within 15 minutes meeting all these people, I was like, wow, these are like my people. What the heck? I've never felt in any sort of group, and especially in like the arts and stuff like that, like, oh wow, they speak my language. This is like my
That's
people,
dope.
and it was a beautiful experience. And after that first time, they called me back to keep working with them. And then the next time I went, it was in DC, and I was with this big artist from Italy. His name is Davide Quaiola. And I mean, just like, he's one of the maestros of this multimedia, artistry for sure. And he did this beautiful piece with the piano in the main gallery hall, and I programmed the piano, and I helped set up the system to work creatively with like the technology and to have the notes reflect on and play back on the piano, like, and all that. And at the end of the event, like, had lunches with him, like and we bantered a lot, and like, at the end of the whole thing, like we ended up going for drinks and partying and doing like going out there and in DC. And it was just like, at the end of everything, it was like, hey man, you were really awesome. Thank you for helping me with my installation here. Like, you're definitely a great, talented dude. Like, keep doing what you're doing, and
How old was he?
He's like 40, 42.
But imagine how much better and how much you'll evolve in the next 12 years.
I was 29.
Yeah.
But
seriously, you'll grow so much. And who's to say you can't be there?
Just to have that validation where, wow, like literally one of
the best people in the world has validated me.
It's like, hey, you're on a good path, kid. Like, keep doing what you're doing. To me, that was just like, we need that. We need support. We need
community.
We need people to like encourage us. You need that.
I need encouragement. Yeah.
So I fully encourage you to keep doing this.
I fully encourage you too.
And so if anything, if we want to end on that message of like, we're nothing without that encouragement, because we can't, like, what is like that drive to keep pushing out and creating when like, it's just like when you drop it out and nobody like
says anything. It's funny.
It hurts.
It hurts. It's funny you bring this up. Here's some synchronicity, because this morning when I was going to the bathroom, I woke up and this thought came to my head. I popped on Instagram, and there was this guy from high school named Dylan Ireland, and he raps and he makes really good songs. And I heard his song today, and he's been consistent with it, and he keeps doing it just because he loves it. And I just had this thought. I was like, all of us need to encourage one another and artist pursuits. We all have our own timeline, and I know a lot of us, like, we're all searching to be big. You have this Instagram reel that's like, look at my art, but look at my following, and I just think I absolutely agree with you on that. I think a lot of our friends and a lot of our groups around us, and just in the essence of community, we all need to support each other, acknowledge one another, and go like and subscribe. Go listen to their songs. Go to their shows. Follow their pages and encourage each other, and let's build a community. I think that's what we're really lacking here in Dallas, is just that cohesiveness, and I hope that we can find it. I feel a lot of souls here on that same page where we want community and we want to bring it together, and we're on the path. We just got to keep encouraging one another.
Yeah, no, it's part of being the influence on the cultural shift, and it's always going to be, I think that path is particularly more of a counterculture to Dallas in general. I've always been one that gravitates towards counterculture anyways. Like, don't go with what the crowd goes per se. But, I think at the end of the day, we all need that encouragement. We because it's just like, that's the only way that you can keep building. You don't build on yourself, you build with others.
You do.
Yeah, not on top of others.
Not on top of others. And there's that competition mindset. Mm-hmm. And I think we all have space to succeed. And we got to remember that. Let's encourage, let's support each other. Even if someone's doing the same thing as you, to, help them with their tools and have them help you with their tools and grow together,
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, in my industry, it's a very, 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 very small community, but I've been fortunate to have linked up with a few people that do speak my language in that sense, right? Creatively.
Yeah, that's also important.
We have been implementing some really cool projects that will hopefully come into fruition that I may share on the next podcast.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Joel, for coming on. It was really nice to have this deep conversation with you.
We always go deep though.
we go deep a lot, but I don't know. I thought it was really beautiful, and I feel very privileged to have been able to be the one to experience this, and I'm really happy we get to share it with others. It was powerful. It was moving for me.
I hope, especially in this Texas area, a lot of people from, especially where we talked about our spiritual side of things, it is something that needs to be talked about a lot more.
It does.
So thank you for helping bring that out.
Yeah.
Ex-church kids. Let's go.
Ex-church kids. What's up? So do you have anything you want to plug? You're at the Meow Wolf installation currently in Grapevine. They just opened up in June.
I did. Yes. I contributed to Mariel Guzman's piece, some light installations, and I co-created interactive display with Carmen Menza. So when you walk into one of the hallways, you'll see this TV with trippy interactive visuals. That was me.
So go check it out.
And yeah, Meow Wolf is up there. And then yearly we do bi-yearly, every 2 years, we do a Mixed Modus, which is it's my immersive dance multimedia group where we it's original music, original dance, and immersive projections on the whole thing. And we do that at the AT&T Performing Arts Center. And
which I have backstage passes too. So
ooh, okay,
I'm kidding.
I'll let you know.
I'm kidding.
Oh, you will on the next one for sure.
Yeah.
No worries. You're invited for sure.
No, I want to attend. I want to see. I wasn't able to make the last one, but I definitely want to come support you and see.
Thank you.
Because it's beautiful. I saw videos.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a good time. And the next projects is Burning Man for me. And then afterwards, another big deal that I would rather not put out right now, but once it manifests, we will declare it to the world.
Go follow Joel at joel.jolie.
Jolie, Joli.
.dfx. Jinx, you owe me a Coke. All right, guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.